Unit 1, Introduction to Cyber Warfare and Terrorism. In this unit, we're going to discuss the concepts, reality and importance of cyber warfare. This unit offers a scope of discussion that defines the key terms needed to understand the development of cyber warfare and terrorist activities. This unit gives an explanation of domestic and international organizations dedicated to protecting and securing cyberspace. Our goal in this chapter is to encourage awareness of the terminology and scope issues surrounding the application of cyber warfare in commercial, criminal, and military arenas. We will explore multiple sources to define the key terms used in this unit, principally terrorism, critical infrastructure, and cyber warfare, to facilitate an understanding of the relationship between cyber warfare and infowar, and the differences between cyber warfare principles and any other form of warfare. The primary objective of this unit is to give students and professionals interested in the technical, historical, political and cultural basis of cyber warfare an understanding of its nature and how it relates to crime and terrorism. Cyber warfare is an increasingly important global issue, and therefore it's important that you gain an understanding of the importance of examining cyber warfare issues, understand the definitional and jurisdictional challenges facing the cyber warfare professional, gain an international perspective in examining cyber warfare issues, and take the opportunity to consider the ethical issues surrounding the use of cyber warfare. For many people, the concept of cyber warfare is a relatively unidimensional concept, and one which, especially through exposure to modern film and television, it's seemed to be well understood. In such films as Tron, Hacker, War Games, and The Net, we see the protagonists using computer systems and networks as weapons and as bastions, with warfare essentially employing a traditional attack-defense posture where strength, fortitude, military tactics and strategy are key elements in destroying or subduing an opponent. The reality of cyber warfare is that it presents significant challenges to orthodox strategy for a number of reasons. In common with satellite and long-range missile technologies, civilian air travel, and to a certain extent road travel, cyber warfare makes previously impermeable borders porous. Satellites and long-range missiles are expensive, so that only large-scale organizations, typically wealthy governments, can afford to own and use them. What marks cyber warfare as different is the cost is sufficiently low that the only real limiting factor is expertise, not equipment. As a result, cyber warfare allows a battlefield where the relative size of opponents is reduced in importance, asymmetric warfare. In traditional warfare, the enemy is well defined, a neighboring country, a country with a strong ideological oppositional stance, a country in direct economic or Lebensraum competition. In cyber warfare, the enemy can still be a national entity, but it can also be a relatively small and unknown group or even an individual. The motives of such groups and individuals are many and varied. In traditional warfare, the enemy and the rationale are, for the most part, understood. In cyber warfare, we have to consider who the enemy might be and what their motivations are. In traditional warfare, the quality and extent of the resources available to an enemy can be directly or indirectly established, so the capacity of the enemy for offense or defensive action can be gauged. In cyber warfare, the primary resource is intellect and skill. In traditional warfare, the players come together on an agreed, albeit reluctantly on the part of the defender, an agreed battlefield, and expend military resources to reduce or eliminate the capacity of one of the players to prosecute the battle. In cyber warfare, the battle is asynchronous. One side may not even know that the battle has been joined for a significant period of time. The purpose of this unit is to define the concepts and components of cyber warfare and how it relates to crime and terrorism. This includes a presentation of discussions on the nature of cybercrime and terrorism and the goals of each. Included will be debate on potential targets, attack strategies, possible countermeasures, and discussions on dealing with the aftermath of successful or partially successful attacks. Consideration of both corporate and government policies for defending, combating, and conducting cyber warfare is also included. Cyber warfare is not a unidimensional concept. It draws from both traditional and modern warfare principles and typifies both the symmetric and asymmetric characteristics of modern warfare. Cyber warfare both differs from and complements other forms of warfare. The primary differentiating characteristic between cyber warfare and traditional warfare is that the economic cost of engaging in cyber warfare is sufficiently low to allow a wider range of non-traditional actors to engage. That one characteristic results in some very interesting observations, not the least that the actors can remain relatively anonymous, once secure borders can now appear quite porous, and the ability of nation-states to suppress information on cyber attacks is diminished. Many practitioners and professionals become involved in aspects of cyber warfare as a result of a combination of technical competence, a firm belief in the value of protecting the physical, political, and cultural characteristics of the society to who they owe allegiance, and a desire to become involved. It is vital to explore the relationship between the technical tools and skills that form the arsenal on which the cyber warrior can draw, and the moral and ethical authority they claim in order to justify their actions. It's reasonable to assume that any ethically justified action in cyber warfare legitimizes that same action by the enemy. As a consequence, any discussion of cyber warfare requires an examination of motives and demands a full exploration of the ethical issues associated with any action. It is my hope that this unit will help promote awareness about the dangers, threats, and issues surrounding the use of cyber warfare techniques by criminal, terrorist, corporate, and governmental organizations. In February 2003, the United States government published the National Strategy to Secure Cyberspace, a document that recognized that cyberspace is the nervous system, the control system of the country, connecting and providing administrative control of critical national infrastructures and key resources, and as such, representing a potential target for individuals, groups, and nations antagonistic to the United States and its way of life. The document identified a number of key areas in which dominance or control of cyberspace by potential adversaries was largely uncontested. It proposed the development of national strategies for securing critical infrastructures and key resources, providing coherent crisis management responses to attacks, coordinating governmental, private sector, and academic resources, and improving public understanding of the nature and seriousness of the threat. In doing so, the strategy identified 5 critical priorities: a national cyberspace security response system, a national cyberspace security threat and vulnerability reduction program, a national cyberspace awareness and training program, securing government cyberspace, and national security and international cyberspace security cooperation. Secretary of the Air Force Michael W. Wynne and Chief of Staff of the Air Force General T. Michael Mosley added to the Air Force mission through a statement issued December 7, 2005. The statement issued to the Air Force personnel announced that their new mission was to deliver sovereign options for the defense of the United States of America and its global interests, to fly and fight in air, space, and cyberspace. The purpose of the new mission was to deliver the full spectrum of effects. We will evolve a coherent enterprise with warfighting ethos, ready to execute any mission in peace, crisis, and war. We will foster a force of 21st century warriors capable of delivering the full spectrum of kinetic and non-kinetic, lethal and non-lethal effects across all 3 domains. This is why we are standing up to an operational command for cyberspace, capable of functioning as a supported or supporting component of the joint force. From a military perspective, as command and control relies increasingly on electronic communication, the need to protect data communication systems becomes critical, and both defensive, to ensure undisrupted communication, and offensive, to degrade enemy communication, capabilities must be developed. The US Air Force is not alone in its need to expand its mission to encompass the digital domain. Military forces in the EU, Taiwan, China, Russia, and Australia have made similar statements and are developing both offensive and defensive capabilities. Cyber warfare has commercial and criminal as well as military aspects. In recent years, the term war has been applied in the United States and elsewhere to describe any concerted military response to an organized threat against the nation state. For example, the war on terror and the war on drugs. With many criminal and terrorist activities being differentiated primarily by motive rather than tactic or modus operandi, and with well-established connections between organized crime and terrorism, there is inevitable crossover. Commercial organizations wage cyber warfare primarily from a defensive posture, although industrial espionage is not unheard of, with significant consequences for failure, particularly with respect to the protection of client and consumer information. As the threat to commercial systems entered the public consciousness, the consequences of security failure can be economically catastrophic. There is evidence that security failure results both in changed consumer behaviors and in legal liability.